Hi, welcome to Real Talk. I'm Kathy Dawson with Royal LePage Heartland, and these are my teammates Rick Lobb and Jeff Bauer. It's been a while since we've done a podcast with the pandemic in play, but it's good to be here today. And we're going to talk about the crazy real estate market. So we have gone from a balanced real estate market to a seller's real estate market in the last 4 years. Yeah.
3-4 years, I think. We'll rewind to pre-pandemic. The last time we did a market update was in our first podcast in 2019, maybe would have been the first one. And it was approaching a seller's market at that point, and had been for a little bit, but it was just starting to kind of move towards a bit more intense of a seller's market.
Yeah, 2017 was kind of the turning point.
This start from balance to sellers, but what happened when the pandemic came was there was a lot of fear in general. As we all know, nobody really knew what was going to happen, and we in the real estate industry didn't know whether anyone was going to want to sell their house, if anyone was going to want to buy a house or move anywhere or look at a house or show a house, those sorts of things. So just the same as everything else in the world, there was a lot of question marks. And then what ended up resulting after the first sort of initial waves kind of passed was an exodus from the bigger, higher population dense markets to the more reasonably priced markets, the ex-urban markets outside of the deep population density. One, because people were wanting to get away from as many people, and two, because they realized at a point that they could work from home. So there was not only people that were going to kind of be coming out anyways in their retirement, but people that realized, hey, you know what? Maybe I can drive into the city once a week, or I can. We're telecommuting. Everyone's working from Zoom and Teams and things now. So once that sort of started happening, all of the markets outside of the GTA and the London markets, everything just spread out in all directions. And obviously, Huron County was one of those final destinations for a lot of people.
Yeah, I remember the Friday that the pandemic sort of hit Canada and changed the way we were living, essentially. That Friday, I had 2 listings that were coming out onto the MLS system. And so it was one of those times where you realize, oh my God, we have all these restrictions that are being implemented, and I've got this listing coming out. And this is only in 2019, which seems like forever ago, because at that particular time we weren't doing the normal, you would leave a property or listing on the market for 5 or 7 days before you look at offers. We were at a stage at that time where we would be dealing with offers as they came along, because we were just in the early stages of knowing how to appropriately manage all this buyer demand compared to the low number of listings we had. So we have this this little bungalow come up in Clinton for $299,000, which at that time, being that it was a small bungalow, $299,000 seemed like a very high price for that property, because those folks had only bought that a couple of years before for in the mid-hundreds. So we were thinking that $299 was a heavy starting price, and in 48 hours, by that Sunday night, we had 5 offers and it sold for $320.
In the onset of a global pandemic.
And that was a very telling experience for how that pandemic, or this pandemic, was going to unfold in real estate, as far as real estate is concerned, in Huron County. We had, we just never stopped seeing this influx of buyers, as you
that's still coming. So Rick mentioned something that that has become commonplace now that wasn't pre-pandemic, and that's the That's the holding of offers and multiple bids. And there's a lot of jargon that kind of comes around that. So maybe we can clarify a little bit. So when a listing comes to market, the seller and the listing brokerage will discuss the strategy under which they want to list the property. And one strategy that was employed previous to the market changing here in the bigger centers was the holding off of offers, or an offer date strategy, wherein the listing brokerage and the seller would market the property and show the property for a predefined period of time, during which the seller wasn't going to entertain any offers until a specific day that everyone's aware of, and then everybody comes with their best offer on that day.
And every person offering knows how many they're in competition with, and nobody knows the details of any of the other offers.
So that was commonplace in the bigger centers. We hadn't really experienced that here until, the last couple years. And in that time it sucks for buyers. There's no doubt about it. It's a seller's market. It sucks for buyers, but sellers obviously are going to choose to employ what's going to get them the best looking offer as defined by them, which isn't always dollars. Sometimes it's closing dates, or it's conditions, and it's those things.
And on that note, it's interesting, and I know we've all experienced this, and that is a situation where, a seller, but as you just said, the highest offer isn't always the offer that is the most attractive. And so in this market that we have, that we call normal now, and you're bringing, 5, 6, 9 offers to the table to a seller, the sale price is already over the asking price. And so sometimes, not with every seller, but oftentimes, sellers will start to want to know who is interested in buying their property and make their selection based not only on the highest number, but on who that person is and what their story is.
What their intended use of a property
is.
That's
right.
And sometimes the seller even knows who a buyer is beforehand. So there's a number of different things that a seller will take into consideration. And at the end of the day, it's the seller's final decision on which offer they deem the most attractive to them.
I have had a few this year where in one circumstance, the seller only wanted a local buyer, and they didn't want a buyer from out of the area. And then another one where it was very important to the seller who was moving into the property, and they didn't want somebody renting it out for short-term rentals to get the most money that they could off the property. It was more important that somebody was going to be living in the home. So you do see that aspect as well. And the reason that we did switch to offer dates, and having offer dates was important so that the seller would get enough exposure to the market and enough buyers had an opportunity to get through. So it is more fair to buyers rather than the property comes up and then quickly disappears.
Yeah, it's a good point. There's a common perception out there that, it's that holding those offers is unfair. And I mean, the market is unfair. That's what's unfair. If you don't hold offers and you get a new listing, it will be sold in an hour, and then there will be a number of buyers that didn't even get an opportunity.
They're disappointed anyways.
That's right.
Yeah.
They didn't get an opportunity to even look at the property before it got sold. So it's as unfortunate a market it is for buyers, it's still necessary to try and make it as fair as possible so that at least everybody gets an opportunity to go through the property, to see it, to know whether or not they like it before and have some time to try and get their ducks in a row before they actually have to put a signature on an agreement of purchase and sale.
Yeah, and it's not like this is a Huron County problem. This is happening here. This is happening throughout southern and northern Ontario. I was speaking to a colleague up in Sault Ste. Marie just the other day, and she indicated it's the same up there. Their prices have increased a similar amount as ours. They had never even heard of getting multiple bids on anything, so to speak, up there. But now they're in the same boat as we are, adjusting to the new seller's market. And there's the attraction. There's an attraction to areas that are, like Goderich and like, Sault Ste. Marie or the North, where the price point is such that it's more attainable for somebody than $1 million for a condo in Toronto or whatever it is, right? So they're seeing people changing their lifestyle and finding appreciation for, the slower pace and the outdoors and the clean air and those sorts of things. So that's where we're seeing a lot of buyer traffic getting pushed out further and further from those GTA regions,
Which
because
is
of affordability and lifestyle.
Which is funny because this was the market that people were being pushed out toward just a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like, we were the fringe market just a few years ago, and now we're not the fringe market anymore.
There is no fringe market now.
That's basically.
There's no
That's
fringe
the
because
reality.
there's such a demand. There's such a demand for housing.
And just to put that into perspective, I'm going to offer two pieces of statistics, two pieces of data that will show just how different the market is today compared to 2019 even. In 2019 of January, the average sale price for Huron County as a whole was $324,000. And in January of 2022, the average sale price in Huron County was $644,000. That is a massive average sale price gain in a very, very small amount of time.
3 years and
it's
a
doubling.
100% increase in price.
And then the reason, why do those prices jump as high as they do? Well, the number of homes that were for sale in January of 2019, there was 184 homes sold for sale in Huron County in that month of that year. In January of 2022, there were 49 houses for sale in Huron County. So,
And the majority of them will be sold by the end of January.
yeah. So you see supply going way down and demand continuing to escalate. Now, I don't want this to sound all doom and gloom, because it could be very discouraging listening to what we're saying and then being afraid that this is just going to make home ownership completely unattainable for first-time home buyers. And there is some good news coming down the pipeline. And of course, the problem that we need to solve is a problem of supply. And with the developments like, for example, the Coast Goderich development that we are involved in, there's a second large development coming into Goderich. There's two developments coming into Saltford at the Century Heights in Saltford. There are two developments that are happening in the town of Clinton. All of these developments that are moving ground right now are going to help build that supply up. And yeah, maybe a first-time home buyer is not going to be able to afford a new house, but maybe that first-time home buyer is going to be able to afford a house that belongs to somebody who's finally able to upgrade a home and build something new in one of the subdivisions and sell.
Or they can buy the house of the person who bought the house of the person who bought the house.
That's right.
So
Is
as
the-
supply increases, we will
Yeah.
see more opportunities for buyers, and we'll see a bit of a change in the market in the future, for
And
sure.
it's not even a matter of supply of single detached homes. I don't think
Right.
that cures it. I think that the impact of some of these larger like apartment buildings and higher density multi-level multifamily units, that's going to have more of an impact, because a lot of people that are in big old homes that want to move don't necessarily want to move into another home. They want an apartment. They want that ease of less maintenance and cost of living and budget friendly. So there is some of those things that are going to be happening as well. But there was a stat I saw, and it's there's a need for 1.5 million units in Toronto. That's the need.
That's
So
crazy.
how does that get satisfied? It's impossible.
So the Phil Soper, who is the CEO of Royal LePage and seems to have his finger on the pulse of the economy and real estate in general across the nation, about 6 years ago, Phil Soper said that that the boomer generation, when the boomer generation is done with their real estate, the boomer generation has continued to own a lot of property. And he predicted 16 years in the future, which was about 6 years ago. So we're looking at about another 10 years where we'll start to see that boomer generation unload the real estate that they have. And that
And
will
I think
be...
the pandemic has made some pent-up ownership that's happened there, because a lot of boomers have kept their properties. It's easy to sell, but it's not easy to buy right now. So if somebody wants to downsize to that bungalow or move, it is a little bit more challenging right now, and we're seeing them keeping their properties. And as this pandemic starts to ease, and that comfort level comes with selling and moving again, we might see some more supply in that respect as well.
And if we start to also see so typically around here in Huron County, we see single family homes, we see, and we've obviously in the last several years, we've seen the advent of that row housing, those fourplex bungalows that are everywhere now. The next thing we'll probably start to see are some condo units,
stacked townhouses,
yeah, stacked
condo
townhouses,
units.
Some condo units that would become for sale. We've seen a little bit of it in Goderich on Kingston Street. There's been a few apartment-style condos that have sold there, and the Coburg Street Sully House.
Yeah, and then I guess on a separate note, there's also, you've got the Bluffs area, like the land lease communities are burgeoning like crazy right now. They're trying to expand as quickly as they can, because there is a huge drive, just because that's an option, especially for retirees, where they're comfortable getting into, especially new units. You're not dealing as much with the competitive way that buying a single detached freehold home. So we're seeing expansions in, the Park Bridge parks, all of the land lease places in the area are, they're getting filled up, and they're getting multiple bids on these units that I would wager have increased even more than the average single detached on average,
And the Larry Otten built as well. If
Yeah.
something in there comes up for sale, they're gone right away.
So I'd say every style of home ownership has been on the table for this switch to a seller's market. But as a first time buyer, as Rick mentioned, it can seem very intimidating. But there is alternative ways to attain, to compete against these people that have probably deeper pockets. And if you're fortunate to have family that might be able to help, there is rules around the gifting of down payment money and gifts that can be used for down payments. So that's one option that a lot of young and first-time buyers have been able to use. There's the first-time home buyers plan, where if you have funds in an RRSP, that you can access those funds without having to pay income tax on taking them out, and then you have to pay them back over time in a scheduled way. So those are a couple of ways that first-time buyers are able to access funds to make their bids and their offers a little bit more attractive when you are competing. And every buyer is probably going to experience the heartache of missing out on a house or two before they're able to successfully get an offer accepted. But it's a growing process. The hardest part, obviously, is falling in love enough with a house that you're willing to buy it and put an offer on it, but not being so in love with it that you're attached and become dejected with the entire process. So it's a fine line, and obviously as professionals we deal with it every day. And we can help navigate those things, but it doesn't change the emotional reaction that a buyer is going to have. So it is, but it is something that you become familiar with, and some are more comfortable with than others. But there are answers and ways to kind of strategize around offers that a real estate professional can help with.
And the municipalities in Huron County, and Huron County as a whole, the administration is well aware of the issue, is well aware of the fact that they have a vested interest in having supply for first-time home buyers, young local buyers to have places to live and buy around here. So they are working on solutions for making development less expensive or easier, to try and encourage developers to try to build less expensive housing, to create it more, make it more attainably. And we have a construction friend of ours who's going to be on a future podcast, who's, he's putting his efforts toward building some attainable housing that is going to be new housing, super high performance, and
Very exciting.
And very reasonably priced.
Yeah,
so there are solutions coming down
the county, the towns, the economic development, the business communities all have a very vested interest in the expansion of and availability of all sorts of housing, because it does trickle down when you have a higher priced development, for instance. As we said, the stuff that they're moving out of and that the other people are moving out of becomes available. I know the town of Goderich is working very hard to try to create, or I guess to lessen barriers for the development of some of the underutilized spaces in the town that one might notice as they travel through sort of the arterial roads, Suncoast and Bayfield Road sort of area. There's a lot of space around there. So the hope is that the town of Goderich is able to create a plan that will attract, developers and remove those barriers, be them planning or tax incentives or whatever they might be, to try to bolster that, just to kind of create more spots for people, so that employers can have places for employees to stay, so that all of these extra people that are moving here can have a spot to, go buy a pair of slacks or get a coffee or get their taxes done, because the number of services that we have here have decreased. Like, the availability of those services has decreased so much because everyone's busy, because there's just more people and people are retiring, and it's the nature. We just need more space for these people.
Yeah. One other
changing.
thing I want to touch on before we go is co-ownership that we've started to see. Co-ownership, or generations living together, is something we've seen a little bit more prevalently during the pandemic. So just to give an example, a duplex, seeing two generations of a family buying a duplex, and it's cheaper than both of those families purchasing on their own. They buy the duplex together and live together. But
yeah, we'll continue to see that ownership sort of dynamic change and evolve as people try and find solutions to at least get into a space that they at least partially own.
Mm-hmm. Even sharing houses together, renting, buying a larger home and renting out rooms.
And the municipalities, in recognition of the current state of the market, they're a lot more forgiving and willing to recognize and allow for those kinds of ownership models, and having a unit in your home. They're much more open to that now than they have ever been in the past.
And we'll continue to see that change. We'll continue to see the demographic of our area change in terms of age and cultural differences, which is great, fascinating, and awesome to have in the area. The town is going to look a lot different in 5-10 years, as some of these high-rise buildings type of things start to be built. The towns are expanding. The services are going to change. The way that we administer services is going to change, and it's exciting for the town of Goderich. It's exciting for the county of Huron.
So thanks for joining us today for this episode of Real Talk. We're Homefield Group. Homefieldgroup.ca is our new website, and thanks for joining us.